orbit. This media component is what is typically called a slider or carousel. So we can have different slides with transition in between them, and these slides can be both image-based or have various content inside of it. So we'll go through the examples. We have a wrapper and the slide container that we can't see anything here, but I'll explain that in the code. And then we have the image-based slides. We can see that each image have a caption as well, and it changes automatically to the next slide. Unless we hover on top of it, it won't skip to the next slide, so it pauses. We can also add next and previous arrows, which we can see here, so the user can navigate between the various slides. We can add bullets in the bottom to easily jump to a specific slide. Here we see different contents. This is a call out with text inside of it. We can see that we can change the animation. So on the first examples they are sliding. On this example it have a fading transition. So you can change that as well. You can also disable the motion UI so it will change or transition instantly. You can change the timer delay, which is the time between each slide. Now we've decreased it to 2000 milliseconds here. Finally, we can disable the pause on hover. So when I hover this orbit down here, it won't affect anything. It just continues to go to the next slide. All right, let's see how we can create all of this. So in our code editor, first I'll show you how to create the wrapper. This is simply a div tag with the class orbit, and for accessibility we give it the role attribute, the value region, and the area label attribute, the value carousel title. To initialize it with JavaScript we need to add the data orbit attribute as well. This is what the wrapper looks like. Now inside this we have a slide container. So this consists of a URL tag with the class orbit container, just like so. And inside of this we have some list items with the class orbit slide. Just copy this. One of them must have the class is active, so this will be the first one shown when the page loads. Now let's create a fully working orbit with image-based slides. So I'll paste this code in here. And now inside our first list item, I'll add a figure tag with the class orbit figure. Then I'll add an image tag, and the source will be an image from our subfolder, 900 times 900 pixels big, and the alt text will be descriptive text for slide, and we'll give it the class orbit image. So this image can be found right here in this folder. Okay. We'll also add a caption for the image, so we add the fig caption element with the class orbit caption, and we add some caption here, caption for slide number 1. Okay, we'll now copy this code and paste it in the second list item and also in the third list item. We just change this text value like so. Now let's save this, go back into the browser and refresh the right tab, see what it looks like. As mentioned earlier, the wrapper and slide container can't be seen. It's just code with no content. But here we have the fully working orbit with image-based slides, we see that we have the caption in the bottom, and we see that it automatically transitions to the next slide. Alright, now let's add next and previous arrows so the user can control the transition from one slide to the next or previous. I'll copy all of this code, paste it in here. Now I'll add the controls at the very top here. So before our container, we add a div tag with the class orbit controls. Inside of this, we add two buttons. The first button will get the class orbit previous, and inside of this, we add a span tag with the class show for SR. So this will be the text previous slide that will only be available for screen readers to read aloud. For the user instead, a regular user using a screen will use some code here to create the arrow with using this code here. Now for the next button, we'll change the class to orbit next and the text to next slide, and the symbol or icon will be changed a little bit as well. Now let's save this, go back to the browser and refresh. Scroll down, here we have our arrow that we can use to jump to the previous and next slide. Great. Now let's continue and add bullets to our slide or to our orbit. So we copy this whole code, paste it in, and we'll create the bullet at the bottom after our unordered list. So we add a nav tag with the class orbit bullets. Inside of this, we add three buttons since we have three slides. The first one will get the class is active, since this will be the first one that's active when the page loads, and we'll give it the data slide attribute with the value 0. So the index is 0 based, so this means the first slide will have the number 0. Inside of this button, we first put some text for screen readers, so we add a span tag with the class show for SR. And this will be caption for slide number 1. This will be read by a screen reader. And then we add one more span tag with the class show for SR and the text current slide. This will also be read aloud by the screen reader. Now we'll copy this button and paste it in 2 times. I'll remove the isActive class, change the value of the data slide attribute to 1 and 2, and also change this text here to 2 and 3, caption for slide 2 and 3. And finally, I'll remove this current slide text here, since it's only true for the first button. Now let's save this, go back into the browser and refresh, scroll a bit down. Now we see that we have the buttons or bullets for our orbit, so we can jump to a specific slide just like so. Now let's see how we can use different kinds of content for our orbit. We'll copy this whole text or code again, and now we'll remove the content from our slides. So we'll remove this figure element here in all of the 3 slides. Then instead we'll create a call out element using a div tag with the class callout, and the first one will get the success class as well. Then we'll add a heading, callout heading, and then paste in some random text for a paragraph here. And finally, we'll add a link, callout link. Now we'll copy this a few times, paste it in, change the classes to warning and alert. So now we have 3 different callouts as our content for the slides. So let's save this, go back and refresh. Here we see we have the first callout success, changing to the callout warning, and finally changing to the callout alert right there. These transitions have all happened with a sliding animation. We can change that using the Motion UI library that comes with Foundation. So now let's change it to fade in and out when we change the slide. So we'll copy all of this, paste it in, and now we'll add a data option attribute where we can pass in various options as the value of this data options attribute. So we can use a shorthand for animation. So we'll add anim in from left, colon, and the value will be fade in, and then a semicolon, space, anim in from right, colon, fade in, the semicolon, and then anim out to left, fade out, semicolon, space, anim out to right, fade out, and a semicolon. So we'll save this, go back and refresh, scroll down, and now we can see that we have a fading animation in between these 3 different callouts. So the first one is success with the light green background, then we have the warning with the light yellow background, and the alert callout with the light red background. So these will fade in and out when we change slide. We can also disable the Motion UI, so the transition will happen instantly. To do this, we'll paste in the code for our orbit here, and now we'll add the data use MUI, which stands for use Motion UI, and give it the value false, so the default value is true. Now when we go back and refresh, we can see that the change happens instantly, no matter if we click the arrows or the bullets, or if it happens automatically. Now let's see how we can choose or set the timer delay, which is how long it takes to change from one slide to the next, or how long time it shows one slide before transitioning into the next. So to do this, we'll paste in the same code from before, and now we'll add the data timer delay attribute, and the value will be milliseconds, so we add the number 2000, so this will be 2 seconds for each slide. So we refresh, and now we'll look at it, and we can see that it changes every 2 seconds. Finally, let's see how we can disable the pause on hover. Right now I'm hovering this example and it pauses. It continues when I remove the mouse. We can disable that. So we'll paste in the code that we had, and now we'll use the data pause on hover attribute with the value of false. Let's save, go back and refresh, and scroll to the bottom. Now we can see that when we put the mouse on top of this example, it will change to the next slide even though I'm hovering. So no pause on hover. This was all about how you can use the orbit to create a slideshow or a carousel for various content.